Live in the Salon with Benita and Rita. Welcome. Get a glass of wine and get comfortable. You will be empowered, inspired, and will definitely have a little fun. Hey, you may even learn something new. In the Salon, we host community conversations, so all voices are appreciated. We hope you will enjoy the show. Cheers. Hi, and welcome to Live in the Salon with Benita and Rita. I am Benita.
And I am Rita.
And we're excited to be back again with the Culture Mix Radio. And we're in the studio. So again, this week, last month, the last time we were together, we had a man, and we were excited because we don't usually get men on our show.
We sure did. We had a whole lot of women up in here too.
Yeah, because we were talking about getting married and stuff. But today we're speaking to a different audience. So welcome, Mr. Robert Dortch, author of Cool Fire, A Black Man's Poetic Odyssey. Thanks for being here.
We're glad to have you. And let me tell you why we're so glad. Because Robert, let me just give you a little bit of information about him first. Through the rhythm of poetry and the power of photography, Cool Fire, A Black Man's Poetic Odyssey, invites readers into an intimate exploration of identity, love, justice, self-discovery, resilience, healing, and legacy. Robert L. Dortch Jr. shares a deeply personal yet universal journey that weaves the weight of history with the hope of tomorrow and the passion of struggle to do more than survive, but to love and to live life fully. Now, we are thrilled to have him because in this book, he is raw. He's very transparent, and I enjoyed reading it. And I will tell you that I am not necessarily a poetry person, and I told him that when I bought the book, but I read every page because it was so good. And I learned a lot about him. And so what we're going to talk about today is more about him being a black man. And we're going to talk about black men in general. And so all of this comes from the book. All of our questions come from having read the book and going deeper into black men, because it's difficult for the average black woman to truly understand. Well, it is for me. Is it for you?
Well, I was raised by a single father, as all of our viewers know.
Yeah.
So I had a different purview. Of that. And I'm a mother of two
boys,
young black men.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have to look at it a little differently and be a little bit more broad, and not just look at it how I think it should be, and try and connect with them.
Right.
So.
And that's been interesting too, because Benita is a whole different kind of black woman. Yeah. She really is, because she was raised by her dad, and I see that in her. And I'm very traditional with my dad, granddad, uncles, brothers, and everything. And I raised 2 girls and 2 granddaughters, so I see it through the eyes of a female.
Yeah.
So having said that, we've got great questions for Robert. And again, you all can jump in at any time. But I am so glad to have you. I hope that we can get through these questions today, or I'm going to ask for a part 2. Because I know that you are going to be authentic and honest with your answers.
Well, Anita and Rita, thank you all so much for the opportunity to be here. And I think really it is important for us to try to create a better understanding of what does it really mean to be a black man and to be in relationship with black men, because there is depth and complexity and breadth that is often not communicated and expressed. And some of that is external, some of that's internal, because we are raised to kind of protect ourselves. And because we are raised to protect ourselves, we internalize a lot of our emotions, our feelings, our beliefs, and that is a protective mechanism. So Cool Fire is an attempt to say, how do we begin to open up and explore, because it's going to be important for us to be in relationship in a certain way with our partners, those who love us, with our families, with our children. You talk about daughters and sons, especially during this time, right? For healing, for health, and for us to be hopeful in a different way. So I think that's why, for me, Cool Fire was an important way to express who we are and what our dreams
I
and
love the name,
aspirations are.
Cool Fire.
I do too.
like that. I got a quick question just based on what you just said. Were you raised, like a lot of people, men specifically, that to not show emotion?
So yes, and so the beauty of my experience, which I'm so grateful for, that I grew up in an environment was like, yeah, hey, don't be a crybaby, boys don't cry, those types of things. Yet I understood and saw through my grandfather, who I saw how he was with my grandmother, how she could just lay her shoulder on his head, and how he spoke to her, how he addressed her as a he was a gentleman. So the way he communicated, the nonverbal communication was something I also saw. And then I had an uncle who was very affirming and encouraging. So while there was an environment to say this is what it means to be masculine, I also saw another expression of what it means to be masculine from my grandfather, just by watching how he interacted with my grandmother, how he would her hand,
Yeah.
or how you could see her
Yeah.
on his shoulder, or sometimes I have pictures of them dancing and those things. So I knew it was more to being a black man than what we were often told,
Okay.
right?
That's good.
And that was in an environment where it was like out of necessity
I get
to
it.
survive, to be tough.
Yeah.
Yet my grandfather showed me something else, that there was another way.
That there's another side.
Yeah, there's another side,
Yeah.
and I am grateful for that.
Yeah. So my big aha from this book, and you got your book so you can read it, or shall I? Okay.
I got it.
So I learned a new word. I mean, it's not a new word, but it was a new word for me. And read it, Robert, and then they'll figure out what the word is, and then you'll know why I love Robert so much. I'm just trying to get in. Too.
So this so it's interesting when Miss Rita called me and she said, I don't like poetry, yet I'm falling in love with this book. I'm reading this book, and she said there was a word, and I'm like, what does that word mean? And I said, what poem are you talking about? And she said, I am. And I said, okay. And so let me read it and see if you all can, what word that she was referring to. It says, I am a black man with the last name Dortch. I'm an American citizen. I'm a son. I'm a father. I am from Virginia, born and raised in the former capital of the Confederacy. I read, I write, I vote. I'm educated with a couple of degrees. I inspire people for a living. I get paid to think. I have aborted life. I'm a believer in life. I'm a family man. I'm divorced. I have failed sometimes. I'm a leader. I'm a philanthropist. I'm a coach. I travel. I have a passport. I zip line. I boogie board. I hike. I bike. I run. I've completed 3 marathons. I'm a baker of cakes and cookies. I laugh. I cry. I care. Once I freed a bird who was trapped in the ice on a frigid winter day. I hurt. I grieve. I'm a Baptist preacher who believes Jesus, Allah, Jehovah, and Buddha are all related. I am successful. I am intelligent and articulate. I will cuss you out. I am sapiosexual. I am complicated. I love love. I'm more than what you think you see. I'm a beautiful man, and I'm not the only one. We are everywhere. When will you see us?
Did y'all hear the word?
Sapios.
How did they know you didn't know that one?
So y'all know it?
Attracted to intelligence.
Exactly. Exactly. That is exactly who I am. That is who I marry, And Benita, and I think that's why we get along so well, because we talk about intelligence and intelligent men.
Yeah.
And so having Robert here today and me being able to, I'm going to wear a sign, I am sapiosexual.
Yes.
So
we should
stay
get
away.
those shirts.
Well, but see, the thing is, they
Back up off me.
often think men are not, like, especially black men, they often think that we are attracted to the physical. So we talk about bodies and shapes. It's like, growing up, it was, what, I'm a brick house, that type of thing, instead of saying, no, we are smart, we are intelligent, and we are attracted to intelligence, right? So that's when I'm not just walking around and looking at who you are. I said, that's high school.
Yeah.
That's adolescence. If you haven't outgrown that,
At this big age, right?
at this age, and if you don't outgrow that, And so because beauty is so much more, right? And that's a part of that, especially as black men, when we're people see us and they think that's all we think about. Our sisters see us and they think that's what we're thinking about all the time, right? And then what does that mean for our daughters? What does that mean for our sons? And so this was saying, hey, I'm more than that. I can recognize beauty, and yet beauty is more than just the physical.
And we do need to help our young ladies know that.
Yes.
You know, while we're educating the guys and helping them know who they are. I remember I went to the CIAA one year, right? And so you see a lot there.
Yes, you
And
do.
so I asked a brother who I knew, you know, I was like, okay, what's up with y'all, you know, going after these women? They say, this just for the weekend. We'll call y'all on Monday, you know. So I was like, oh, I get it. Like, you know, the me's, you know, because I'm not scantily clad and, you know, I try and show my intelligence sometimes before the first couple bottles. But
She just went right there, didn't she?
yeah, but you know, but
No, I
you know,
get
there's a
Yeah.
certain type
Exactly.
sometimes that they go to
Exactly.
for that Thursday through Sunday or
Yeah.
Thursday through Saturday, and then on Monday, you know,
Yeah.
we're the ones that they call.
Yeah.
So it's not, you know, the physical may be right now, but I don't know if it's long term.
And then the question is, what's the cost of that, though, right? So what's the cost of those types of, whether we talk about one night stands, those types of weekends, what's the cost of that for our communities?
Yes.
And what's the cost of that for our relationships,
Exactly.
right? So this idea that I can just go away for we like what, you know, what
Right.
happens in Vegas stays in Vegas
Right.
kind of thing. Like, what is the cost of that for our communities?
And how do we
though?
miss each other? Because I was very involved with an organization that was national for minority business owners for 13 years, and this was back in the 90s, you know, and we used to have activities all day long. Then there'd be dinner, and about 9 o'clock or so, the guys would go to the bar, and I never went. I never went to the bar
Okay.
because it just wasn't perceived. You know,
Okay.
the guys were at the bar, the women weren't, but that's where business was being dealt.
Yes.
And so, you know, there were several of us that would kind of stay behind, and the guys would say, no, come up. So even that has grown, because I can go to a bar now and feel very comfortable.
Right.
But back then, it was inhibiting my business, you know, to
But were you
feel-
worried about the image, like
I
what it
was,
looked like?
I
Okay.
was,
Okay.
because there were other women who would go, oh, she's still at the bar with the man, it's 10 o'clock. No, that wouldn't be me. You know, I didn't wanted to get back to my mama.
Ah, okay.
You know?
Okay.
So, yeah.
Whereas my daddy would have been like, you should have been at the
See,
bar
see?
and made
Why
that
weren't you
deal.
there?
Right.
Why
right.
weren't you there? Yeah,
Yes.
I get it.
And that's where the communication piece is so important, right? To say, how do we kind of communicate and understand the different ways in which we can show up? And that's the reality, is we can show up in more than one way. Yet
Right.
what is a healthy...
That's good, Robert. We can show up in more than one way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can. We've given ourselves permission, though, to do that, to be able to show up depending on where we are, depending on how we dress, you know, depending on who we are and what it is, what the message is. Because I do believe, after owning a boutique, that women know exactly what they're putting on. They know exactly what they're wearing. They know exactly why they're wearing it. There's never a time when you go, oh, this little thing, we know what we're wearing. So it's just about knowing who we are and being able to speak the language of how we're looking.
Right, so that goes to identity, which
Yes.
is one of the chapters
Yes.
of the book that we talk about identity, because identity is, we are grounded in that. Once we know who we are, it positions us to be comfortable in showing up in different ways, because we said, I know who I am now. My uniform may change,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The way I show up with my sons, they need to be able to see me in a vulnerable way, right? Now, when I go out into the world, I do have to have a certain armor on, right? To be able to protect myself, to be able to provide for myself.
Absolutely.
Yet what happens is we bring that home with us sometimes, and
Yeah.
we don't take that off,
Yeah.
because it's like, hey, I still gotta, and I can't be that way with you.
And I think it's tougher even for women, though, don't you think?
No,
When
it's
you say
tough.
bringing the armor home, and we're supposed to let it go.
Yes, and so it is. it's challenging for especially women who are wearing multiple hats and multiple roles. When you're talking about being an entrepreneur, you're talking about being a mother, and then you're saying I'm in relationship. You're a leader in your community, and so those multiple hats that you're wearing is also saying now, how can I understand how to navigate
Right.
those different things? And that's why identity is so important. When I say, okay, this is who I am and this is what I believe, that's what I'm rooted in, and then it allows me to express myself in the different ways, and that's where the creativity and the imagination comes in. Because
So we talk about that. Women talk about that. Do you guys talk about that? Do you guys use that word identity and knowing who you are?
yes, we do, and yet we communicate with each other differently than how we communicate with you,
Okay.
right? So for me, it is like brothers would say, "You good?" That's
a whole
it's a lot.
conversation.
It's a lot right there.
That's
like,
a loaded question.
Yo, brother, you good? Like everything, you all right? You
Yeah.
good? Whereas with you, I made that a little bit deeper and have that. So because with you, I can be vulnerable. I want to be vulnerable in a different way. The
But
question
Robert, what
becomes,
if he's not good? What if he's not good?
And see,
that's
that-
my question.
and that becomes one of the things sometimes when we're not good, people are not always comfortable with how to respond when we're not. We're saying, you know what, right now it's tough.
I'm not
Yeah.
good.
Right, and then I may need more than some good bourbon and a cigar.
Right.
Right.
And you probably go deeper, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so and that can be hard. That
Yeah.
can be hard for me, and to say, okay, how can I say, well, you know what, right now I'm not good, and then being able to have the types of friends where you can trust and you can share with them. Yes. And so
When
I
you're
think
not
that's
good
the
Right.
that's the thing when you say I'm not good, and that's about the transparency, and that's about the vulnerability, and that's what Cool Fire seeks to do, to say, okay, is there a way for us to be able to have these conversations with ourselves, with our boys, the brothers,
With our ladies.
with our ladies, with our children, and that's what it intends to do, in micro versions, not to overwhelm, but to say that's why you have the questions,
Yeah.
right? Because it's like, how do we have some of these conversations that we're avoiding? We're
You guys are deliberately avoiding them?
I mean, sometimes we don't know how, and sometimes it's painful because once you open it up, once you open something up,
yeah.
which may be based on trauma and those things, then what do I do with it? And are you going to walk with me?
Yeah, you
Or
got
are
to
you
trust
gonna-
the person that you're giving it to.
Right.
You know.
And there's trust, right? So
Yeah.
when you think about, I use Jay Shetty's trust model. It's not just about competence. It is about care, right? That, are you going to care for me when I show you who I am from a transparency where you can see me, but vulnerability is being able to experience me, right? That's about care. Then character, that means that's about integrity. Can I trust that you're going to honor
Of course.
with discretion
Of course.
that, and then consistency. It's not like you're
we're
here
gonna keep it up.
today,
Yeah, we're gonna
and then
keep it
you're
up,
you're
yeah.
gone. Like you're here now, and then it gets a little like, whoa, that's more than what I. And then you're gone, and so that's what we're trying to, understand. Can you handle it? Are you going to do it with care?
Yeah.
Are you going to do it with integrity? And are you going to be consistent in that?
And I think it's important that the receiver understand, can they handle it right now?
Absolutely.
Because we're always dealing with our own stuff. I remember a person, I know we got to go to break in a second, but one day I didn't ask how he was doing. And he said, you didn't ask how I was doing. I was like, I can't today, because you may not be doing well. I got my own
That's
stuff,
good.
and so I can't handle
good.
whatever it is you're giving me today. And so it's okay. So we have to be honest as receivers of the information that we can do all of these things that Mr. Dortch said we should, he has to entrust in the receiver of the information. But I know we got to take a quick break, but this conversation has been wonderful.
And I want to come back to that.
Okay,
right?
we will come back to
we
that.
want to come back to that because I think there's something very important.
Put
that
a
we
pin
wanted
in
to-
it, because
Yeah,
my,
put a pin in it.
my memory is bad.
Well, I don't have
Put
to-
a pin in
well,
it.
Yeah,
Put a pin
I
in
mean,
it.
we want to follow.
Okay.
We want to
All right.
follow
So we'll
with
be
that.
right back with Live in the
We're not
Salon
gonna
with
be gone
Benita
long.
and Rita.
Stay with us.
And we're back with Live in the Salon with Benita and Rita. So, Robert, you were about to make a point before we end it?
So, Benita, you said something interesting in saying sometimes I don't feel like I can handle and that was about being honest,
Yes.
right? And so what I share with folks is never ask a man, if you see a man expressing himself and being vulnerable, never say what's wrong with you, because by saying what's wrong, it's like saying it's not okay to
feel that way.
To feel that way.
Right.
If you see him tearing up,
Right.
or being silent or withdrawing, don't say what's wrong.
Okay.
Because a lot of times people say
Right.
what's wrong. By saying what's wrong,
It's like it's wrong.
yeah,
It's
and
almost
so
better just to be quiet.
it is to be quiet, to say what's going on.
Yeah.
What's going on?
You know, you ask the question in a way that is inviting without, because by saying what's wrong, that seems like a form of judgment, and brothers will shut down.
So will I.
Okay.
And
'Cause
so
it's not about wrong.
Right, it's not about wrong.
Yeah.
It's like saying what's going on right now. Do you need some time?
Okay.
Can we talk about this later? Do you want to talk about it? Right. So I think it's understanding how we frame stuff with brothers if we want to engage and be in conversation, right? And that's what we try to do in Cool Fire. It's not about like a right or wrong. It's about how do we have conversations, and can we create spaces for conversations for us to be able to connect with each other, right? So
Yes.
not saying, hey, what's wrong with you? Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
I was like,
Yes.
okay, what's going on?
Okay.
What's happening? Can
Can
do you wanna
guys
talk-
say that too, though? Because I think they should.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I think the
Okay,
same
this is a
thing.
lesson
is
for all of
right.
us
I think
then.
that it is for us to
Yeah.
kind of think about how we're asking the questions,
Yes.
right? How we're showing
what
up.
words are
want
we
to
using?
right, and words matter.
Of course they
Right,
do.
and so that's the
Absolutely.
whole reason I wrote the book, because
Yeah.
words matter, and
Yes.
how we're framing and how we're asking questions of one another
Right.
is important if we want to be able to connect and
Right.
better understand each other.
Okay.
So that's
So we had a question
audience
from our
question.
audience.
Actually, I think you've addressed it. It was the point I wanted to make was, excuse me, that men are not often can they reveal themselves who they really are. But there are some women who will think that if a man does reveal himself in that way, if he's vulnerable, then they might look at him as weak.
And that's
So it goes.
and I think that's our flaw.
That is
Of
us.
course.
It is
Yeah.
awful. I was sharing with Rita this morning, when she woke me up at the crack of dawn, that this past week I hosted a prostate cancer awareness event. So of course it wasn't for, I mean, we're all invited because, as our speaker said, it's a family cancer. It's not just on the man, on the person who has it. And I had a woman tell me, well, I'm not coming because I don't have a prostate. Sometimes we get real self-centered and in
We
our
being
own
women.
stuff
We
that,
being women.
you know, that we don't realize you got a father, a son, a brother, a love interest, you know, whether it's your boyfriend or your husband. There are people around us that it does impact, and we have to step outside of ourselves. It ain't always about us,
Yeah.
you know, and I think we do get caught up in that sometimes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we got to be. You know, I'm a coach. You're a coach. That's a coach over there. So I understand what we're saying. I feel like we need more conversations like this, so that, because my thing is, and my daughter and I say this all the time, you need to read the room. Read the room, because you're not responding in a way that the environment is occurring. Do you see what I'm saying?
And that takes practice, though. So
I know.
what happens is, I think it's saying, do we create the space for that type of learning and that type of engagement to take place, right? Because if you're not accustomed to doing that, to think you're going to just show up and do that,
Yeah.
it doesn't
I get
happen
it.
that way. And we are missing each other because we're not having these spaces where we can have these types of conversations. We may go on dates with each other.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
different to saying, hey, and that's what I tell people. When you go on dates, your first date shouldn't be to a movie.
Yeah, 'cause
Right,
you can't
go
talk.
some, you
That's
can't
good.
talk. Right, go
you can't
somewhere
talk.
where you can have, whether it's coffee or tea, somewhere where you can have conversations, or you go to a museum where you can talk about, like, what do you think about that?
Right.
And you can begin to create space to understand how to communicate with one another. And yet, if you're not used to doing that, to think that's going to happen, because that's what happens. People think somebody's going to show up and say,
Yeah.
a brother should be able to do this, a sister should be able to do this, and it's like, well,
And
why?
he should pay, and it doesn't work like that.
Well, we have been trained and conditioned in a certain way that may not have been healthy and in our best interest. And so it's, how do we reframe?
Correct.
How do we reimagine and create ways for us to say, hey, this is what I hope and I desire, and that's what we have to ask people. What do you want, right? What's your vision for your life? What's your vision for relationship? And then saying, okay, based on who I am, how do we go about doing that, and having those conversations, and understand they can be hard, right? So I think that's another thing too. It's hard work, right? It takes hard work to build anything that's going to be successful, especially relationships. And what we're trying to do in our communities is repair relationships. We're trying to redeem relationships, and what that takes is a different type of commitment, and that's what we're trying to do in Cool Fire.
Robert, what do you want young men to know? 13, 14, 15?
So
10, 11.
I created a rites of passage for my sons at when they were getting ready to turn 13, because what I wanted them to know, that as they're evolving into manhood, that they can be comfortable in understanding who they are, that they had to make the investment in being able to put in the work spiritually. That and right now what we've done is we've made it where children can get to choose whether they want to, like going to church. We talked about right now, why are young people struggling? Because it's a faith issue. Because they haven't been, no one said, hey, you need to go to church. Like, we didn't like going to church.
But we had to go.
We had to go, and yet, so when you get in trouble, you say, okay, I could return to my faith, right? They're not having that because they had the option not to do that. So the importance of faith is important to understand. Hey, be willing to ask for help. Like, if you're hurting, be willing to ask for help, because it gets to a certain point where we're pretty much told that, hey, handle it on your own. Suck it up, brother. Take care, handle your business, man. Suck it up. What's wrong with you?
But even as I hear that 10-year-old or that 12-year-old, and you're saying it's oftentimes mama and daddy, or particularly daddy, who is not able to figure out what's wrong or think that nothing's wrong. I mean, I've been living this way for so long, I'm good.
And so that's where support systems come in. That was another thing on the rites of passage, that had men who were willing to commit to say, I'm going to be here for you, because I understood that sometimes I had blind spots as a father, right? And I think that's another thing. We have to allow our children to see, when we say vulnerability, allow them to see our humanity, right? Because at one moment they think we're Superman, and then the next thing is like, what's wrong with this, right? So I think allowing them to see our humanity, yet to understand, hey, there are other brothers too who are here for you, because sometimes we may have challenges in our relationships, yet there were other men, there were coaches and other who committed and wrote them letters and said, hey, I am committed to being here for you in your evolution and your growth and your passage into manhood. And I think that's something that is important for us to do, to help our young men to say, we're here for you, and then that we help create community for them, right? Like, how do we help create community in a way that's healthy, not just like, hey, these are some basic things. Oh man, you need to know how to holler at a shorty. It needs to be more than that, right? Like, you need to know how to say, hey, because that's the kind of stuff you were taught. Like, growing up is like, yo, you need to be able to say, you need to have that game, right? You need to know how to spit that game. You need to know how to talk that talk, right? And you learn how to do that. Right,
and I'm teaching daughters and granddaughters and the women that I know to walk away, and then we're accused of.
So then you can be like, you think you, and I've seen this play out, like, oh, you think you better than anybody else, so you think, what's wrong with you? And that's okay, because guess what, there's somebody else who, even though you won't, there's somebody else who will, right? And I think that's why we have to have a bigger conversation to say, as my father used to say, because you can does not mean you should.
Absolutely.
Right? He told me that when I graduated and I was moving up to Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C. in the 90s was it was
a special place.
It was a special place, right? And the whole point is that because you can does not mean you should. And so that things of being able to walk away. There are times when I didn't, and then there were times when I say, okay, is that in my best interest?
Right.
Because you start thinking about your purpose, right? Like, you like, what is that going to mean for me?
So I have a question about the village.
And let me say this one thing. I tell my sons, I say, okay, you see somebody and they find whatever, just say, can you see her being the mother of your children?
Right.
And if you cannot see her being the mother of your children,
right,
that's how do you hit Paul? And that's a tough thing, in a
Right.
moment where everything is elevated, right?
Right.
Ooh, Robert, you are being so PC with this. I
But
love
that's
it.
so
No, I get
true
it.
though. You know, just
Yeah.
recently, David Justice had a whole lot of heat behind it because he was married to Halle Berry, and he had said that he couldn't, you know, with all of the beauty and wonder that she is, he could not see her being this mother, and he was basing, and he, you know, we put the time stamp on it. This was in the 90s, and his view of a mother was what his mother did. You know, she cooked and cleaned and all that, and he couldn't see
Yeah.
her doing that. Not that it was a bad thing, but he just said it, and people went in on him. But I understood that he said that's what he was at the time, and he kind of, you know, he matured. He's different, but that was his view.
Right. So I think the question becomes like chemistry, right? Because I'm like, you can have chemistry or energy, right? When you see somebody like you have this energy and this spark, and there's this chemistry that goes on, and I say, okay, you got to go beyond the chemistry to say, okay, what is this connection? Like, what's going on? What's going on here, right? And then you say, okay, how are we called to be together? Like, how are we called to be connected? Okay, how do we communicate together? And you don't really know until you understand how can you solve conflict.
Yes. So
Right?
that's
How do
the
you solve
truth teller.
conflict? And then my son and I were having a conversation, and he said something. Say, yeah, I'm in a relationship and I'm having this conversation, but what we realize is say, hey, we don't do this to each other. We don't talk to each other in this way, and then that means care. Right? Like, how do we care for each other when we do have disagreements? Because guess what? In relationships, we're going to have disagreements, right? That's a part of it. Now, the question is, how do we communicate? How do we connect? How do we care for each other? And then we understand how are we called to be in relationship with one another, right? Our purpose. Because I said a relationship can't just be about romance.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be in a relationship with somebody that's just about romance, because especially with black folks, there is this idea that there is a social responsibility that we have and pressure that we feel to show up in a certain way. So it can't just be about romance. It has
That's
to
like
be
looking
about
at it through like them rose-colored glasses.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
that
yeah.
would be beautiful if
But-
that's all.
but I love
and that's
so
what's
much,
sold, though.
Yeah,
That's what's sold.
Yeah, but it's so much real life that's happening, and you got to kind of maneuver through real life with each other. But I got to ask this question really quickly, because you talked about the village as a part of your rites of passage with your sons. There's so many men with this huge ego that no other man need to tell my sons anything. How do you break down that wall with those men to say, listen, you know, because I always feel like if you don't have enough men in your circle to entrust them with teaching something to your sons, you got the wrong circle.
So I will say, and I'm very fortunate because, like I said, I tell people, and I dealt with this. People say it's not a lot. I said no, there are a lot of good brothers out there. It's just they show up in different ways.
Okay.
Right, and I will say that. Like, I think about like my uncles. I think about coaches. I think about brothers who they may not. You know, we talk about this thing now. Okay, people are looking for the brother with what? The six figures.
The good
Got
credit.
a certain look. Got the, you know, the 700, 750 credit score, you know, a certain position. And I'm like, yeah, 80% of the people are looking for that brother. I've said, what about, and that's a small number of brothers. What about all of these other brothers who show up in a different way? Guess what? They not at the club. They not. Yet they coaching, they volunteering, and yet that's not, you're not looking for them. You're looking for the brothers who have a certain, they meet these
Right.
criteria. And I'm like, no, let's start looking at these other brothers who, guess what, they're solid brothers, yet they don't know how to spit game like that because that's not how they practice. They may
Right.
be awkward.
Right.
And-
So before you ask your question,
go ahead,
because
go
it's
ahead.
time for us to have a
We
Wait,
gotta
it's
stop.
a-
We do.
I can't say this one thing.
All right, say that
Okay.
one thing. You got 30 seconds.
So I got stuck in an elevator downtown Richmond, and I mean we were like on the 15th floor, and we had to wait for a man to come, an elevator guy to come from Petersburg to repair it.
Get out.
My point is, he was the most important person in my life at that time, and I
should
just
have
think
married him.
I
You should have.
I mean, he saved us, and so.
Well, he can save you, but I don't mean you should marry
Yeah,
him.
you
though.
should
So I-
marry him.
I won't
But no,
go
we
that
got
far.
we got to take
But what I'm saying is that he was, you know, I could have got a six-figure guy who was in there with me, you know. So we have to look beyond. That's
And
my
that's the
whole
point.
point before we
Okay.
wrap up.
So we'll be right back.
Okay,
with
y'all
Live
need
in the
to
Salon
stay. I
with
still
Benita
got
and Rita.
questions
We'll be right
that I
back.
ain't
Yeah, we got.
And we're back with Live in the Salon with Benita and Rita. We have another question from our audience.
Miss Camille.
Yay. Hi. I just wanted to go back to something that you said a little bit earlier, where you kind of talked about how like men check in on each other versus like how they check in like with women about like their feelings. How you said, like, you know, men will say, "Oh, you're cool. Are you cool?" You know, and I was reading something, like I was looking at a comment today, and like there was a man who was saying he posted a status on Facebook about how sad he was about spending his 31st birthday alone, and like men commented on the post, like there were a number of men who commented, you know, basically insulting him. And then when people came back, you know, saying, "Oh, you know, you're all in your feelings," and like, but there were also men who said, you know, like they're the reason, like, you know, people saying stuff like that are the reason why men don't feel comfortable, like being vulnerable and expressing, you know, how they feel. And there were also men who got on that comment and defended that interaction by saying, well, this is just how men communicate. Like, we insult each other, and, like, you know, that's kind of how we, you know, we banter back and forth. And, you know, I feel like there is kind of that sentiment among, like, a lot of people. And I wanted to get your take on, like, how would you address that among, like, the men of, like, you know, that is feeling like, oh, you know, we're just bantering. We're not discounting each other's.
Right. So social media has almost become like this social experiment barbershop that takes place right through social media. So I'd say be careful with that and saying where are the spaces for you to be able to be vulnerable, because you can't, everybody doesn't deserve your vulnerability. Because everyone can't handle your vulnerability. So I would then raise
So
question.
you're talking about the guy who said, I'm by myself.
Right, I'm by myself. To say, was that the best space for him to be vulnerable? It's one thing to be transparent. That's being honest and truthful. But when you're being vulnerable, you're saying, I want you to experience me and get to know me and understand me in a certain way. And to say, is social media the best space, you know, for that? Like, I have a small group of brothers that I would go to in that way if I'm feeling, you know, like it's a couple of my fraternity brothers that I've known for almost, you know, over 35 years. And so they understand. Or I have another couple of brothers who, you know, we're very close. I have a poem in here that I have about one of my friends who passed away, and I could read that. I could read that poem. I could read that poem, which is called. It was called "My Dear," you know, "My Dear Friend," because it talks about this idea of brothers, being able to be in relationship, and how we can be in friendship with each other. And it's because he asked that question of me. He asked the question of me that, and it's called "My Dear Friend." And it's for Joel. It says, we first met in a sacred place on a sunny day surrounded by yellow sunshine. The richness of spring in a city with a past filled with pain and hope. Remember the garden high on the hill. We mused about our beginnings, where we come from and how we come to this place. On that day, our words walked us to common ground. As our talk was about to end, I asked, how can I help you in your new role? And your reply was, can we be friends? Your invitation surprised me, and there was a silent pause. We smiled and agreed to start with a walk. As time moved forward, a friendship began. Our morning talks with coffee and tea in the cafe. Afternoon walks down by the river. Talks about manhood, love, our sons, and life. Mountain bike rides on rolling hills. That was a stormy day I'll never forget. In your West Virginia home, I found rest as I prepared for one of my greatest tests. I remember the call, the words you shared. An unwelcome stranger had entered your mind, and you didn't know what tomorrow would bring and how much time was left to share. When our last walked together, you spoke about friendship and gratitude. You explained the type of golden leaves that were flying from the trees, and we didn't know how much time remained. That this might be our last time. Friends we did become. Friends we will always be. this is not the end. So goodbye for now until we meet again, my friend. And he passed away last year, my friend Joel, and we became friends, and that became a safe space for me. Like I went into stayed in his home, and we shared. And so that's, I think we have to be intentional in saying, how do we do that?
So
How do we-
seeking safe spaces.
Seeking
rather
safe
than-
spaces instead of waiting for someone to do it or putting it in a public forum where you don't know those people. They don't really
Yeah.
know you.
Facebook,
Right.
is, like those social media is probably the worst
Right.
place.
And I want to say, I mean, I think it's a platform.
I mean, but for
Right,
vulnerability,
for
'cause people
vulnerability
will
as a
attack.
man, and you, and because people will, and they don't know you,
Yeah.
right? And that's what you have to say. They don't know me,
Right.
right? And yet that's what I'm saying. We have to say, how do we do that? And that's why I'm grateful for Joel, because he said,
Right.
"Can we be friends?"
Right.
And at that age, that's not where we usually would. Guys weren't asking that,
Right.
Right.
and so
right.
he was vulnerable in doing that. And then we said, "Let's start here,"
Yeah.
and we grew our
And
friendship and brotherhood.
He has 2 sons, and Joel had 3, and all 3 spoke at his funeral. And his last son said something that Joel had said that I will never forget, and you probably have heard me say it, where he says, "This moment matters. This moment matters." And it just brought me to tears at the funeral because
Yeah.
it was so
Yeah,
him.
it's-
And I had not heard him say that before.
about presence, right?
Yes,
And I
it's
think
about right now.
how can we be present with
Yes.
each other, right, in a way that's healthy, in a way that's loving? And that's what I try to do in Cool Fire. It allows you in a poem to be present in a moment and to say, okay, how do we connect? Because so often we are so distracted because so much is happening in our
Yeah.
lives, right? So much has happened in our lives and we're so distracted. So it's like, how can we be present and say, I'm here for you? I may not have all of the answers, yet I am here for you
And that's a huge word.
the best
present,
way that I
Yeah.
can be.
You know.
You know, also I think that if it were in a format as she mentioned, like social media, to be able to say, to be able to narrow it down and say something like, who can relate to having a birthday and nobody acknowledging it, or who can relate to it, and I think that would sort of narrow down your responses at that point.
Well, so this is the idea that how do we learn how to love ourselves, right? So that's one of the poems I have too. I can read that.
Sure,
So
please.
Sure you
I think
can.
it's about, and that's because we wrestle with that. Like you think we don't feel lonely? Like there are times when we feel lonely, like having to raise a family. I remember my dad to say sometimes that's a lonely thing because you have this responsibility,
Yeah.
and yet you don't always have the answers, right? So sometimes it can be lonely. I know what it's like to spend a birthday, you know, by myself. But the thing is, like, how do you learn how to love yourself?
Yeah,
And
to
that goes
celebrate
back
you.
to
Robert,
identity.
were you the only son?
Oh no, I have 2 brothers, right? Like
okay.
I'm the oldest,
Okay.
and yet, but because of my grandparents, I was treated in a,
Got it.
you know, I was treated like Prince Akeem.
You were
So-
special. You were special.
and that's another thing too. We have to be told. How do we tell our children that, like, you are special in a world that's telling you something else? For men and for women, especially
Right.
black men and black
Right.
women, when you're
Yeah.
being
Right.
told something opposite of that, you're being told
Right.
what you're not. We
Right.
need to say, okay, who are you? Who am I?
Mm-hmm.
And right, so this is called getting to know me.
Okay.
Staring in the mirror, asking me, what do you see when you see me? I see a stranger inside of me, fighting like hell to break free. Duality inside and out. What's this feeling all about? What you see is me, but it's not fully me you see. I'm a brother in the midst of a crisis of identity. So I must go create a space for wellness to dwell. Because I really want to be well again if I ever was. Turning down the noise of am I good enough to be with anyone, especially me. Learning how to be with me is where I must start this chapter if I ever hope to be free. My emancipation and liberation are on the line. As I sigh, I ask God, why? Another mountain to climb. What will be different this time? Tired of slipping on internal stones and falling off of emotional cliffs. Healing a heart broken by life and unwise choices. I still hear the cry of aborted voices. I close my eyes and pray, dreaming that this will be a different day. Why does my heart feel this way? I weep in my sleep. Why is trauma labeled as sin? I wake and start again, again, and again, striving to become my own best friend. Walk in the sunrise, longing to feel the morning sun against my skin. Maybe I need to let go of we and go be with me so I can get to know the stranger inside of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that could be a woman's poem as well.
Yes.
It could.
That's
That's a people poem.
It could. It is a people poem.
Right. And I think that's it. That how do we learn how to love ourselves so that we can love others?
Exactly.
Yes.
And I wanted to mention that in the last segment because we have to know who we are. And so, Benita, you were saying this friend of yours, you guys talked because it was COVID. You guys
Yeah,
talked
and
for
this is
6
my
months.
best
You never
relationship.
met him.
Never met him.
You had never met him.
Yeah.
And I just think that's so important that we know what we're bringing to the table so we can understand what we're asking for, and what we're willing to share. So it starts back there, and that's what I would like for young men to understand. What are they bringing to the table? Because you also said, guys say, well, you don't want this, then we'll go. I got someplace else to go.
Right. And so noise, the idea of noise, we have to become comfortable with silence and solitude. And oftentimes we're not comfortable with silence and solitude. I remember in college, right, that it would be TV and music. And we could get WHUR, which came
Yeah.
out of DC.
Yeah.
And so all
The
night,
Quiet
like
Storm.
you got, and so this idea of we're not comfortable with silence and solitude because then we're having to deal with and live with our own thoughts.
Yes.
Right. And so I think it's saying, how do you create space for silence and solitude? And that's one of the things that with my son, before he left, my first son left to go away to school, I have a ball. I got this meditational practice. We'll be outside on the ball, out in nature. And like, what is this dude doing? Like, what are you talking about? Breathing, sitting on the
Yep.
ball,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
silent, no
But it's
this.
important.
What is
Yeah, it
this?
is.
It's
And
so
then
important.
he called me one day. He said, Dad, man, I was in a situation and you teaching me how to breathe
That's right.
saved my life.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's
He said
right.
it saved my life that I was able to go to. My dad told me, okay, breathe, get into
Right.
yourself. He said he said it saved my life, right? And that's why I said, you start off today. You began to help young people and all of us to put practices in place, right? Like I have a practice in place that is every morning is you wake up, I have a gratitude journal, right? I say, okay, what are those things I'm grateful? Like I'm grateful for this moment,
Absolutely.
for us to have this conversation, right? Even difficult moments, I'm grateful, right? Then what is inspiring us, right? Are we like you heard we talking about church and saying faith or something?
Right.
It may be a song,
Right.
or music or something
Right.
to say, okay, what speaks to your spirit, right? Then mindfulness and meditation or prayer. What does that look like? And then get moving, get outside, move, right? Don't stay stagnant. If you say, okay, I may be sitting down, can I stand up?
Right.
Yeah.
What are the things that I can do because it changes and shapes and shifts energy?
It's time for us to stop.
Okay.
Well,
So-
we got a couple minutes, but I
No,
I
no,
need to
because
know where to
that's
get your book.
that's where I'm going.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
where I'm
so
going.
so Cool
We got
Fire,
it,
you
we
can
got
go
it.
to thecoolfire.com. You can get it, and yet it's also sold at all of the retailers. So you can order it Amazon online, Barnes and Noble, Books A Million. So it's in all of those retail outlets online that you can order. That you can order the Cool Fire, Cool Fire,
Yeah.
and like I said, and visit thecoolfire.com.
Right.
Is that how we find you? Because I think there's a lot of groups who would love to have you as a speaker.
So you can find me at The Cool Fire,
The
and
Cool
then
Fire.
thecoolfire.com. You can find me and then also because like as Rita said, I am an executive coach. I have a coaching and consulting practice called JordanSittner.com.
See, we didn't even get into that. I want to have him back. So I want to hear from you all as you're watching this because so we can hear what questions you have because I didn't think we were going to get through this, but it's been good. It's been informative. We want to hear from you. Thank you all for being here. And Benita, how can they get connected to you?
Just call me. My phone number everywhere.
Yeah.
But definitely, you
See,
can hit us up at Culture
that's my
Mix
friend.
because
Yeah.
they know how to find me.
Yeah.
Can we close with a
Yeah.
poem?
We going
Yes,
to. So let me
please.
just tell folks real quickly. I am at rricks.com. That is my email, so you can email me so that we can hear more from you and continue to have amazing guests. So
Yes.
with that, Robert's
We're
going to
gonna end
close
with this poem.
with the
It's
poem.
called When We Fly. Can I fly with you as you spread your wings in the air like a beautiful butterfly to faraway places, bringing hope and care? Can you fly with me as I strive to soar in solitude like the eagle to unknown spaces to see if I can heal and love again and not despair? Can we fly together to a dream that we can only create with each other, where uncertain cloudy skies are our only cover? Only time knows where our flight is destined to go, or if we will even try. So we both sigh and say, let us pray, and let's see if today is our today. I hear you whisper that maybe our only way is to take off in flight and stop this internal flight and go ahead and just spread our wings as we both dare to fly free. Thank you.
Loved it. Peace. Thank you on behalf of Rita, Benita, and Culture Mix. See you next time. Peace.